My name is Kaipo Kekona. I'm here to speak to you folks today about Malu, ʻUlu, Lele and what that looks like through the eyes of our people. There are very small and limited images that can share what Malu, ʻUlu, Lele was and how it looked, but there are thousands and thousands of literature that can speak to its significance and its beauty. This isn't something I normally do, so working on it. All of our kamali'i from Kaipo Kekona. Aloha. Aloha nui. That wasn't in the script. So, Malu, ʻUlu, Lele can be said that it has been established in its earliest stages as far back as 600 AD by a gentleman named Lele and his efforts to sustain his community and bring prosperity to his people and their lands. At that time, you could imagine most of us are familiar with mokuhinia and moku'ula. There's also a pond that is whispered in our stories known as the alamihi. And the alamihi loko'i'a was found a little further north of moku'ula. These two ponds, these two fish estuaries were focal points of our community at that timeline. And Lele was inspired to enhance their abilities and expand on their operations. And so you'll find references when you look into that history of Malu, ʻUlu, Lele around Mokuhinia, and Malu Niu Lele, which was reference to the Alamihi section of our town, of our Wahi of Lahaina. And so that kind of starts to paint a picture for you already. If we understand the images of Mokuhinia, and you can imagine the groves of ulu that started to flourish around them, and groves of coconut niu all around of the Alamihi. And if you're familiar with Lahaina, you can imagine, or you'll see coconut trees very similar to some of these here that held the precedence, the last remaining footprints of the Alamihi. Very similar to what we can find at Moku'ula when you see the springs come forward in the 505 structures, or the dry stack systems along the Aikane o Maui's Cultural Center. Those are the remnants of great existence. We hope we will bring those back. The history of Malu, ʻUlu, Lele can be said that it was removed in 3 phases. Interestingly enough, it was done by fire. The old plantations needed to clear our lands in order to make way for their operations and their economic engines. Born forth was the monocrop of sugarcane. Displaced was Kamalu ʻUlu. In Kamalu ʻUlu, one could find everything needed beyond just your physical needs of medicine, dyes, clothing, housing, weapons, implements for crafts, implements for fishing. Everything you needed could be found in this food system, but not only physical forms, social forms, religious forms. Everything was found within this food system. It wasn't just a food system. It was the way of our life. Shortly, some of you might have seen efforts to save historical ulu trees of our town and landscapes, some that are identified to be as near as 200 years old, possibly even offshoots and springs up of even older footprints. Just recently, I was able to get into our town and take a look at some of the new pula, the resiliency of our ulu, the fact that they are still going, still strong, even now sprouting up out of the ground after a massive disaster. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times these trees have gone through fire. And 4 times they've come back. Let that be a testament of the will of our people and the strength of our aina. This is an artisan's rendition of what Kamalu ʻUlu would look like. Kamalu ʻUlu can be seen as a simple pond, can be seen as a swamp, can be seen as a fish pond, but it is much, much more than any of those. It is a responsibility to care for our land, to alleviate the disaster systems that we knew as people and experienced on a regular. It also was used to increase the food capacity, not to literally be harvested from the pond to sustain our people's desires and diets, but to replenish the livestock in our wild estuaries. Fish ponds were a key role in being successful in Hawaii. This is another rendition just to start giving the image to people so they can understand what it is that we seek. The restitution of our lands, our people, and its environment for the betterment of us all. Everyone will ask you when you speak to this, where did it go? What happened? And so when we want to move forward, we need to look back. The proverb goes, "Ika wā mā mua, ika wā mā hope." Our future, the answers are in the past. And so we have to identify our problem in order to find a solution. And so when we ask what happened and where's the problem, he haka pilikia. This is the pilikia. It has taken away the riches of our lands. It has stripped away the nutrients that fed us. The life of the soil has been depleted and left barren. It'll be our job to bring back those values, to bring back those enrichments. The equity that we need to speak of is not the equity of our finances, but the equity of our soils, the equity of our aina. We cannot speak of aina if we cannot speak to the nutrients and our responsibility to those. Many of us, sorry, like I said, I'm not doing this too often, so I gotta remember for scroll down on the computer and click that at the same time. And I apologize if I find myself kind of off on a little tangent. And so, the equity of soil can be spoken to as well in our literature that we have in Lahaina. When you look up in a Hawaiian dictionary, mushrooms, I'm not going to give you guys the answer, I'll let you look. But it'll tell you a lot about the ike and the knowledge and the understanding and relationships of our kupuna and aina. If it's not aina, it's lepo. What we have today is lepo. We don't have aina in Lahaina. Earlier there was mention of KAEC, Kuia Agriculture Education Center. This image here is a site from my farm, our educational center as mahiai for our youth and upcoming. You can see barren fields, green mountains, beautiful skies, clouds. A lot of work needs to be done to bring back aina to this landscape. Malu ʻUlu Lele was expanded upon over centuries, established in 600s, enhanced and magnified 10 times larger in the 900s by a woman named Vau. Many of us know Ka'ulu La'au and the stories that are portrayed through his task and success. But he often shadows his sister and the greatness she provided for Lahaina. Vau was Ka'ulu La'au's sister, daughter of Kaka'alaneo. And Vau was given lands by her father that were barren and unsuitable for agriculture. No resources, no sources of water were found in her landscapes. These lands today are known as Kilauea Mauka or Lahaina Luna. Those were the lands of Vau. And so Vau looked upon Malu ʻUlu Lele in the lower landscapes of Lahaina, and she wanted to be able to expand on that greatness. And so she came up with the idea to bring water to her lands. And so for us in Lahaina, the first Hawaii system was established by Vau in around the 900s AD. And Vau created an Hawaii system that came out of the valleys of Kahoma and Kanaha, fed down into her lands, and moved its way down, increasing volumes to the Alamihi existence, as well as providing waters into Mokuhinia. So it speaks to the understanding and importance of those two very significant footprints in our existence. Malu ʻUlu Lele and the Alamihi was at the forefront of the discussion for every effort to expand our operations in Lahaina and our society. Oia. He ali'i ka aina, he kawa ke kanaka. The land is the chief, and we are its servants. For us, what does that look like? It requires us to put away our daily grumbles and gripes, put away our differences, and work together to restore the land and its health. This will be a collective effort needed by many, more than what we see here today. This effort is going to be needing to be called upon the thousands and thousands of us. This effort will never be done alone, and was never meant to be done alone. I did this PowerPoint back in April before our August fires came about. It was intended for a specific audience. It was an audience of like-minded people who canvass our state with Aloha Aina initiatives, people that have great strides and made amazing accomplishments. People like Stacy Sprout in Waipa, Kauai, Hile Cavello, Paipai Heia, Paleke Flores, Kauai, Huleia, and many, many more. Auntie Yvonne and the people up in Ka'upulehu and their reforestation efforts. There are great, amazing people out there doing the best work that we can be doing on the Aina, coming from backgrounds, maybe with scholarships or maybe just a high school diploma. But that's not the point. The point is there are many of us and we are all out there. It's interesting how this thing has brought light to some of us. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. Never stood on a stage and presented to anyone. I've never seen it as necessary. But my point is, there's many of us out there. And they all have that ike, kupuna, to do what we need to do. And I cannot imagine, I cannot wait for the day when the support that we have is found right across our pai Hawaii. And all of our people, who do the day-to-day work, day in and day out, hands on the ground, feet in the lepo, restoring the aina, the ola. We need that. We need the support for all of us. It's not just Lahaina. The food crisis, the housing crisis that we face today in Lahaina is not new. I've been told of these stories my entire life. We cannot wait. We cannot look for better opportunities. We have to find obligations. Obligations to what we need to do in order to sustain not our economic existing engine. We built that engine. We need the engine of economics that feeds our aina and feeds our people. That's the economics we need today. The image in front of you was taken 6 years ago. Efforts that we do on our site in Lahaina, on the Ahupua of Ku'ia, by the way, is legacy lands of Ke'eli'i Kolani, and in the trust of Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estate. They have been, how do you say, extremely instrumental in the success that we've been able to do for our site in Lahaina. We've been working towards a bigger operation of Ku'ia prior to our fire, and I've been preparing myself to do this very same work that I'm doing right now in front of my own community, to give them an image, to give them a vision and hope of what we can move forward to even prior to the fire. Unfortunately, a lot of that work has been put on hold, and justly so. But it's not stopping. Today, I'm in conversations where our independent water system for Ku'ia is being pushed forward. If you understand the plight for our people in Lahaina and the fight for our resources, you know, resources isn't a proper word. It's a source. It's a source of life. It only becomes a resource the second we as humans define it as a need. That's when it becomes a resource, because we reuse it for what it is not necessarily intended for. And we need to have those mindsets when we want to move forward and talk about establishments of mokuhinia. What does that look like, and what will it take? Our current yields from our community had exceeded the sustainable yield of what was known by our U.S. government's definition in our watershed. And if our watershed was exceeding yields based on data that was pretty outdated, today with climate change, what does that data show us now? What sustainable yield do we have? What capacity can we hold for our community while we move efforts forward to establish mokuhinia? These are difficult decisions we'll have to speak to as a community. Decisions we will have to make as a community. No one else should have the opportunity to speak on those subjects without hearing from our community first. Soil health, equity, soil equity. Our people work to steward and facilitate the relationship of soil equity within our existence. It wasn't a beautiful time. Everyone speaks of ʻUlu and praises its existence. But even that in our creation stories comes from a dark point, a time of famine, a time of need, a time of starvation. Our people were struggling, probably because we've overtapped what we call resources. And so solutions were identified. Creation stories were made to tell of their significance. ʻUlu, Malu, ʻUlu, Lele. Landscapes were filled with food production systems in order to answer the problems that our people were facing. So we come from a place where we put action to our problems and we take little time to find them. Our existence is so small, but our impact is so large. When we speak of Kamalu ʻUlu Lele as a desire for our community, these are the things we need to consider. Where have we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? Kamalu niu Lele. On our site, we began to build out what people call pilots, plots of sections of land where we poured our initiatives into our soil using formulas of our indigenous food systems. So we create fertilizers from kalo, ʻulu, shoots from our uala. We build our own fertilizers that are safe enough for us to consume. It is literally our food that feeds the land. And so when we look to our future and the development of Kamalu ʻUlu Lele, I want to see these things integrated in them. Industries that we import products for to increase our food production can be found right within our own systems in ways that better the environment instead of lessen them. Agriculture today can be seen as one of the larger contributors to the climate change that we experience. Many of that is not very old of a footprint. Industrialized synthetic fertilizers are not that old. And so prior to those existence, each and every one of us and our great ancestors come from the foundations of good aloha aina practices. It is not far behind. We just need to look back. Kamalu ʻUlu Lele's landscapes and soils look like what you see here. Barren, dry, hard pan. Many of you that are from Lahaina, as far as Honokohau, all the way to Oluwalu, can tell who lives where, not by who they are, but by the color of their tires. Our dirt, our lepo, has a story to tell, and our community can only hear very little of it. We need to broaden that understanding. We need to reach deeper into our community and bring them along, show them what our aina is capable of. Not only to speak to this work, but take part in it. Bring us to the forefront. Show our people the value of what our food systems in Lahaina are capable of and how we will re-establish those. These are the little guys. These guys you'll find interesting enough when you pay enough attention to the work that you do when you're out in the field. You start to see, if I throw kalo scrapings, the koina of our kalo, or the ulika of our pa'iai, and you build those systems into your field work, you start to see different little things grow. Things growing here, things growing there that are not the same, and they're right next to each other. But different foods were fed to those things. Different foods were brought into these akua. This foundation of life, the tiny little microbes. Earlier there was some bioremediation panelists that spoke to these little kini akua. These will be instrumental in the success of bringing forward Kamalu ʻUlu Lele. Integration of food crops that feed our soil, indigenous plants that produce the nitrogens, the phosphorus and the potassiums that we need to have life in our soils. When you research into the food production systems of our people of old, you will find that every single food production site, lo'i kalo, loko i'a, kula, mala, all of them had kukui, milo, ko, all of these trees were commonly found around the existence of food production. not because they were they were beautiful trees, not because they provided shade, but because they fed the soils that we needed in order to be maintaining food production at levels to sustain our population. So some of you might be familiar with the oli of Kulani Hako'i. And Kulani Hako'i speaks of this mystical pond of water in the air. Kulani Hako'i comes from the Kulakai Moku, today known as Kihe. Kulani Hako'i for us in Lahaina is a mystical pond of water beneath our feet. And it's surfaced in areas all across the Wahi that produce springs of water that increased the availability for that soil health and conditioning that we need. Those are absent in my lifetime. But I have a pretty good feeling we might see some of those resurface in the next few years, now that our community is no longer sucking them dry. Some of those springs, these punawai that we know of in our mo'olelo, will be showing themselves again shortly. I truly believe so. When those come up, we need to be aware and be conscious in their role, in their responsibilities, in their locations, and why they are, where they are, who they are. Every single one of them has a name. Every single one of them had a relationship to our people and to the land. We need to reconnect and reaffirm those relationships if we truly want to speak to a sustainable system that we all want to live in. Yields and harvests can be accomplished with good practice. People argue consistently and constantly that our current farming practices need to have the systems that are in place to provide the yields that we need. I'll argue with you on that subject. The picture on my right, I don't know if it's your guys' right, but there's a water bottle there, a gallon water bottle, the Menehune water bottle. I'm pretty sure we're all a little familiar with it. The kalo corms are from our site. Not once has our site ever used fertilizers, not even organic ones. Not once have we used pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. There may be a time where we need to. I believe if we diversify our farm operations, our food production systems, just as we diversified our community, we can alleviate many of those problems and find solutions in different ways that are unexplored today. When you rebuild habitat in the interest of Aina, you rebuild habitat for the holoholona, the native animals, the fauna of our landscapes can find the abundance for their needs as well. And so when people ask us, when we speak of bioremediation in our town, why is it needed? Why is it not efficient for the practices we currently have today? These are why it's needed. All of the auku'u that eat from our stream beds, all of the kolea that flock to our shorelines and pick of our crustaceans, where will they be getting their food from should the toxin footprint of our Lahaina town get into their existence of the environment? Efforts are going to be needed. Conversations will need to be had. And decisions will be needed to be made. I hope that they are made in the betterment of our environment and our people over the interests of capitalistic venues, systems in place to extract from our community, never meant to be for us. Those are the challenges and the definitions that we have to define in order to get to where we need to be. When aloha aina is done correctly, your soil goes from the hard pans, red dirts that you've seen in previous slides, to dark, rich soils filled with life. Earthworms wiggling through your toes. This is the same soil in the same location that I shared with you earlier. This is an effort of numerous amounts of our kamali'i, the children of our community, people of our community, people from afar, all the work that we've put into our aina. This is some of the images that can speak to that. The richness of the land. Yeah, the health of an ali'i is reflected by the health of the village. And if the land is the ali'i, then we are the village. And if our ali'i is not healthy, then how are we? Food production can be taking place in large scales and in great efforts with good health and good intentions. This is our hero. She is the one responsible for leaving us the legacy behind. In 2006, I sat on a volunteer commission known as the GPAC with the County Planning Department, General Planning Advisory Committee. I think I was like 22 years old. Definitely the youngest person in the room, trying to speak to what our future looks like. Those plans showed me things that I did not want to see. It showed us an image of Lahaina canvassed by development from Ukumehame clearly all the way through Malu. And they had them patterned out like a stoplight. Red was nothing done, just plans in mind, vision made. Yellow was zonings are changed, projects are identified, and green was everything's ready to go and soon development will take place. If that was the future, which I hope isn't, ku'ia, the ahupua'a in Lahaina, aina to this very woman here, Ke'eli Ikolani, would be the only footprint we'd have left. It would make up roughly about 1/3 of what Kamalu ʻUlu o Lele would look like should it be back into its original state. And Ke'eli Ikolani very much knew its importance and its significance. She secured all lands that had rights and access to water systems. She understood the importance to hold on to what is the most important asset we have to offer here in Hawaii: water. What you see now is the ahupua'a of ku'ia on the left in blue. You can see Lahaina Luna or Kilauea Mauka all on that left-hand corner, the bottom corner. That gray line is the bypass. Ku'ia goes cleared up into Kaua'ula and rides along the perimeters of Lahaina Luna all the way down to the lower half of Honoapi'ilani Highway. It even had further reach in the past, but today this is its current footprint. The image on the right is what we've come up with for our vision of ku'ia. I mean, it's not the vision, but it's a plan and a map out of where we can see reforestation being successful, where we can see animal operations that help sustain the livelihood and mitigate fire fuel grasses in the field systems, while also providing sustainable markets for our people to consume of our own food production. The lower half can be identified as an agroforest food system that has a diversity of all foods that we appreciate and identify as a diversity of our community. The incorporation of food crops can take place all over the landscapes, utilizing our native landscapes and food trees, food production systems in place to sustain and facilitate the needs of all crops. That is the type of systems we need to figure out how to develop and design. We are making an effort in Lahaina The lower half of the bypass, ku'ia, can be identified for many multiple different resources. It is right alongside and closest to what was the largest power station in Lahaina. Access could be created to see workforce housing implemented at a scale that no longer needs to have a solar farm in presence. We can get best of both worlds. We can put housing up for our workforce needed to maintain the food production levels of ku'ia while also providing energy footprints that could exceed the average productions. It can be incorporated within the same operation. These are systems that I'm hoping that we can explore. Production systems, warehouses to process our food production, create value-added spaces, get them into markets, policies created that require all of our, commercial real estate opportunities, restaurants, luau's, hotel restaurants, all of them could be required to purchase food production systems, food products right out of our own production systems, and they can seek what they need outside of that. But this would create that circular economy that would build our people up. And that's just one example. There's many more that we can talk and explore on. I don't have the time. This is what ku'ia, Kamalu ʻUlu o Lele, looked like. This is the footprint of Kamalu ʻUlu o Lele. You can see in this image the dark blue veins that run down are the streams of Kahoma, Kanaha, and Kauaula. Large outlets called po'oai or makawai were established to auai systems out into the fieldworks. I spoke of Vau and her auai system that she established. If you look at that vertical blue squiggly line coming off of Kahoma at the highest level, that is the auai of Vau. Vau came in at the 900s, expanded the food production systems of Kamalu ʻUlu o Lele. Unfortunately, it took another 700 years or so for the next individual to show up and say, hey, I think I want to do that too. And so Pi'ilani shows up. In the 1600s, we all know stories of Pi'ilani. Pi'ilani comes in, takes a look at what was accomplished by Vau and Lele, and decided to implement his efforts. And so in Lahaina, history shows the longest auai system ever established in the Kingdom of Hawaii was established by Pi'ilani. And Pi'ilani couldn't get into Kahoma and Kanaha and bring water into the lands of Ku'ia or anywhere else in Lahaina at a higher level than what Vau was able to accomplish. And so Pi'ilani had no choice but to go into Kauaula. And when Pi'ilani went into Kauaula, he soon found that in order to bring water to a higher landscape to increase the food productions of Kamalu ʻUlu o Lele, he had to go very, very far back, deep into the valley, and bring out an auai system that could bring water to the larger landscapes of Ku'ia and Kamalu ʻUlu o Lele. He didn't stop there. He also did the auai of Makila that took water systems further south, past Kauaula's reach, and expanded on the food system, creating a food system that was somewhat measured out to be 10.5 square miles in size. And that's not including the valleys that were already in production prior to Vau's efforts. Let's not forget that our people were providing food for our population from the valleys. And that was the original footprints of the bigger effort of our people and the community. You can see here that the alamihi is on the bottom of Kahoma and Kanaha, what is known today as Mala, and how the streams were integrated into the systems. And auais, the large major auais, these are just the major auai systems that were in Ku'ia and within Kamalu ʻUlu o Lele. These large auai systems broke out and provided many, many auai systems throughout the whole operation. Foreign testimonies speak of Lahaina as the Venice of the Pacific. That speaks to our waterways and the abundance of what our town had. The auai systems were not just designed with the intention to feed a patch or two here and there. It was designed to bring in the different magnitudes and multitudes of all the production fields, feed into the systems that people today had no understanding. I don't know how to express that, but today we limit our sight so much on what we have available based on foreign methods of land management. Our kupuna had it best. We need to go back to those practices. We need to redefine what it looks like for us in Hawaii as sufficient, sustainable, independent. Today's definitions don't fit our lifestyles as an island people. Those need to be adjusted. The red line here outlines kuia in a small footprint of the bigger efforts of Malu, ʻUlu, o Lele. Kamehameha schools and their aina and their land department. I know Hokuao is present. A lot of great people in the room today, guys. If you don't know who they are, find them. Neil Hannes, Jack Wong, they're all here. And I know many of us can argue that their efforts aren't great enough. But I can speak from my end that none of what I've been able to do would have been successful without their support. They've gotten behind it. And they continue to push that forward. I've just heard word through their channels that our independent water system and all of its required parts are going to start to make its way to our island here by the end of this month. Organizations across the state within their Aina ʻUlu department have already begun to propagate numerous amounts of our crop systems needed to be implemented into kuia. A day of planting will come, and all of your hands will be needed. We will be planting thousands and thousands of plants. I will do my best to make sure that that is a part of all of our efforts. None of this is going to go forward without each and every one of us having an opportunity to put our hands in that lepo and be a part of it, changing and bringing life back into those landscapes. And once again, seeing Malu, ʻUlu, o Lele in the ola and greatness of all that it has. We will all be a part of it. And so until then, a hui hou.